The Indian Railways occupy a significant and glorious place in India's system of transport. It is playing a significant role in transportation network of the country. Railways have reached to their present place gradually. The early efforts for the introduction of railways may be traced back to the year 1832, when the contraction of a railways line between Madras and Bangalore was contemplated. Industrial revolution had taken place in England and the British industries needed raw materials and wanted a lucrative market for selling the finished products. India, then a colony of England, was full of resources and wealth, but without proper means of transportation and better communication. In order to achieve their goals, it was very much necessary for British industries to develop a railway transport in India. British investors had invested in railways in many British colonies and had earned profits. So they were interested to invest in Indian railways also. Not only this, but political and military considerations were also the cause of development of Indian railways. The East Indian Railway Company and another one were incorporated in England for construction of two small lines near Calcutta and Bombay respectively. These companies entered into a contract with the East India Company for the construction of railways in India. Indian railway development was thus started. The history of railway development in India to the present time has been divided into several well-defined periods to facilitate its thorough study. The railway construction in India started under the state guarantee and assistance. The private companies which undertook construction work were not prepared to invest such a huge capital due to uncertainty of demand of railway service. No industrial revolution had preceded the railways in India. Trade, industry and agriculture were in extremely poor condition, and therefore there was no certainty of the availability of goods traffic to railways in sufficient quantity and on regular basis. Likewise, the demand for passenger traffic was also not certain due to time-worn habits, ideas, poverty, illiteracy, fear and religious sentiments of Indian people. Thus, uncertainty of demand and the heavy capital expenditure involved a great risk of capital being lost if railway failed to operate. Even the enterprising promoters of railway companies in British were not prepared to invest without a guarantee of return on investment from the Government of India. Moreover, unlike other advanced countries, the railway construction in India was not the result of indigenous enterprise or capital. Then the railways in India were viewed not from the angle of commercial benefit but from the standpoint of efficient administration of British rule in India. Movement of military troops and materials and for serving other interests. Therefore, the demand of private companies for guarantee of interest on capital investment was accepted. Government relieved the shareholders of all risks, gave them some expectation of profit over all above the interest, and in return claimed reasonable powers of control and the right of purchases. These companies were the earliest and the most important among the old guaranteed companies. Within a decade, 8 companies were formed. The terms of contracts entered into between the government and railway companies were very positive. The government would give free land for the construction of station buildings and quarters and for laying down railway lines. The agreement shall be binding on both parties for a period of 99 years. Railway companies were guaranteed interest on capital outlay at 5%. The government would exercise full powers of supervision and control on railway lines and allied works. No railway company would be entitled to construct new lines or extend old ones without permission from the government. After 99 years, the entire land on which railway stations and quarters would be built and railway lines laid would become the government property. The government had reserved its right to purchase these lines after a period of 50 years, and payment to the companies concerned was to be made of the average rate of the last 3 years. The main aim of construction of railway lines in India was to serve the British interests. The early railway construction was done in such a way which may facilitate the civil and military administration to consolidate the British rule in India. The important parts and markets were linked so that British industries could get raw materials easily and dispose the finished goods. No systematic policy was adopted to serve the needs of Indian industries, trade or agriculture. Neither the Indian capital and other resources were properly used, nor were the Indians given a share and place in employment. The experiment of a state enterprise was considered to be a good change. Railways grew rapidly, and especially the state railways were a paying concern from the very beginning. No extension of railways was done to serve the needs of Indian trade, industries and agriculture, but the policy of serving British interests continued. However, a rapid expansion of railways helped the growth of Indian trade and industries also.